Hello, my name is Deborah Arbenlow, and I'm a blogger and photographer for Second Life. Today we're going to be looking at creating lighting effects very simply, just with some boxes, not with textures, nothing very fancy, just a very simple way to create some more dynamic types of lighting for your images. So once you get the hang of this, it's very simple. It's not even complicated to start learning. And as you grow, the way that you decide to change your lighting will make it look more impressive. So you can start out from no experience at all and really be able to do this pretty easily. So we've got our avatar. I've put her in a pose. I've put her in a background. This is Minimal's K-pop Garage. And this particular one comes with some sort of lighting built in. And originally it had lighting that was actually turned on already. I turned it off for the sake of this video. So some of your builds may already have lights inside of them. So that's just something to notice. If you turn on your lights and you see that there was already light there, it's probably coming from within the build. Also, not every type of clothing has materials. So not all clothing will necessarily reflect light as it should. So you may find that not every amount of clothing, not every build, not every thing works quite as well as others. So it's a matter of trial and error. I've turned off all of the lights that are in this build and around my workstation so that you can see from scratch. Right now we don't have any advanced materials on. We're just in like a no shadow skin mode. I'm using a modified strawberry Sing wind light that I've made. So this is something I use for like portraits where I don't want any shadows. I just want to see the skin clearly. But for lighting, we need to turn the advanced lighting model on. So I'm in Photo Tools, and this is the Firestorm Phoenix viewer. So it's the skin that looks like the older version of Second Life. So yours may look different. But all these options are in the avatar toolbar buttons menu. So for this, you're going to need the Photo Tools camera and Photo Tools in particular. Alright, so we're in Photo Tools and we want to turn Advanced Lighting Model on. And then we're going to change this to some darker kind of wind light. So we'll go with something that's already in the system. Let's just do, these should be, I think these anime ones are in all of the Firestorm. So let's hit a 12 AM Firestorm one. So this will make it dark, because the darker your image is, the more your light will show. If you have a very light wind light, it's not going to show these lights very much. So keep that in mind as you're messing around with your settings. You don't have to go totally dark, but it helps to create more vibrant looking colored lighting when you do that. Alright, so we want to create some lights. So in order to see lights, we need to go to our light menu in Photo Tools, and we need to make sure we have Enable All Local Lights. So that's going to make it so when we put our lights out, they show up. The other thing we want to do is sort of figure out how we want to take our photo. So I'm going to just zoom in with Control 0 to sort of see what kind of shot we want to get. So let's say we want a shot like this. Then I'm going to go to my Photo Tools camera, which is in the toolbars that we went to earlier. And I'm going to click this button, which is to store current camera view, because I'm going to be zooming out to mess with the lights. So we want to make sure that we have that taken care of. So make sure you click to save your camera view so that when you get out, you can zoom back in. Because it's hard to edit your lights when you're in the place you want to be, but you also need to be able to see what it will look like, zoom out, mess with the lighting, zoom back in, see what it'll look like. Because where your angle of your camera is will affect how the lights look as well. Alright, so let's lay down some lights. I'm going to hit Control B, bring up my build menu, and then I'm going to click and res a box. So really all you need to do this is res rights wherever you're trying to make this. Technically you could attach lights to yourself, but it is much easier to be in a place where you have build rights. So we have our regular box here. We're not going to do any fancy textures or anything. We're just going to go to Features and click the light button. So by default, the light that comes on is the super bright white light. It's not very natural, so typically we aren't going to use something like that. What I like to do is do colored lights to create sort of dynamic images that have some color coming from one side and more color coming from another side. So in any given photo, I could have between 1 and 7 lights, depending on what I'm doing. So let's change this to a color. I have some of my favorite colors saved. So I'm going to go with like a red color. Well, you can see already how this has changed. So let's turn off local lights, turn on local lights. So you can see what a big difference that makes already. So the way this light works, without even editing any of this other stuff, the darker you go, the less you'll see it. The lighter you go, for a while, the more vibrant it'll be, and then eventually it tapers off and just turns into sort of white light. So you have to sort of find your balance. I like to have sort of brighter colors to create effects when I want to have something that looks very interesting. Brighter colors draw the eye more. So let's say we want to have this red color. That's okay. And my jacket has advanced materials. This is an outfit by Azuchi, so you can see that it's reflecting the light. Then we can move this around to determine where we want the light to be. So if you put it in front of yourself, you can see there's a whole bunch of light. Usually we don't necessarily want that with the colors. With the colors, typically you're going to move them to the side or slightly behind so that you can see the color, but it's not making huge, not taking over your whole scene. So for this, we can say that looks pretty good. So let's take our Photo Tools camera and zoom back in. So we're going to not hit this, hit this. I do that sometimes on accident. Load stored camera view. Alright, so we can see where the light is. Maybe it's a little too far up. So we can move it back a little. Zoom back in. Alright, so you can see how the light's sort of showing now. We'll close this out. Alright, so we've got one color box, but it's not necessarily quite as interesting as having more than one color. So let's create another color box. So we can either go back to the regular build menu and add in another box, or what I like to do is just shift and copy. So I shift and you hit the arrow here and you drag one out. So now I have two boxes, but I don't necessarily want the same color. You could, it'll create, let me go back to this, it'll create this effect here where you have the color coming from both sides. So that may be a look you want sometimes, but for me, I like to usually use a different color on the other side. So let's change this to a different color, maybe a blue. A blue kind of goes with the color scheme of the build itself. You can make it a little darker or lighter. This is pretty light already. Maybe you want to bring it in closer to the body. Let's close this out. We can move this around until it seems like we've got the kind of effect we're looking for. So let's go back, Photo Tools camera, go back to the view. Alright, so you can see here, boring, no lighting, nothing interesting. Lighting, more dynamic. And then if you darken your wind light even more, you'll see it even more obviously. So there is a default, ambient dark is a default that you can get from Firestorm. If you click on that, that is 0 light. So the only light that's going to come is the light from your boxes. So here we can see it's not enough light, although it is very sort of artsy looking. It's not really enough light. So if we want to do something that dark, we can create another box in front, create light. We obviously don't want to have something that bright, so we can maybe do like a dark blue. Let's go back, Photo Tools camera. So we can see sort of the effect that we've gotten. So now when we turn on the lights off, you don't see any light at all. So we're creating all of the lights in this scene ourselves. And you can change this light around, you can change the color, and see how it sort of affects. Make it really interesting. The interesting colors sort of sometimes don't show your avatar as well, but they do look very cool. So there's a lot of different types of lights you can do. You can even make it less saturated, more saturated. Okay, so we've got that light ready to go. So now we've gotten all of these lights here, but we want to turn these boxes invisible so they don't get in the way. So we're going to edit, shift, go to all the boxes, go to the texture. Once you've set it all up, so you know you won't have to find them and move them again, we're going to make the transparency go to 100 so they're no longer in the way. And then we'll go back to Photo Tools Camera, and we'll go back to the shot. So now we've got all of this dynamic lighting. If you want to, you can also add face lights. So sometimes your lighting is a little dark, or you want to add some color to a very small area. So I have some Leluca face, am I saying that right? Leluca? I'm having some of their face lights that I've made, and I add them to my body, and then I make sure I turn on Enable Attach Lights, face lights. So I have edited some of these. Not every one of these is editable for some reason, but I edited the colors on these so that I can make them change. So I have different versions of the face lights that I use. So you could use a face light to add a little bit of extra light to your face if you find the lighting isn't sufficient. And some of mine make more effects than others, like this one is much brighter. So you can decide whether or not you want to do that. So without and with creates a different sort of effect. And it comes from the center sort of your face by default, so it doesn't affect the rest of your body as much. It creates a more interesting look. So from there, really you've kind of got your shot down. You can change your win light around if you want to. This is, like I said, no light win light, but you could change to something different if you wanted to have more light in your picture. But if you do increase your lighting, you'll see the colors sort of go away. So this is still a cool photo, but the colors aren't really prevalent anymore because there's too much ambient light and just regular light out there. But say if I went to like a evening wind light, you can see it starts to show more greatly. But ambient, I can't type, ambient dark shows the lights the most because it's only your lights that are showing. So you can create your cool photo. So you can create your snapshot, and you've got what you need to start with. I don't need to save that. So that's pretty much it. So with this, you can create dynamic photos with cool lighting very simply. Does not take a lot of effort. You don't really need to edit the lights. You can if you want to. As you grow, you can create more interesting things with your images. You can start to, do some experimentation with the lighting. But it's as simple as setting down some boxes and turning them on and moving the lights around and changing the colors. So don't be afraid to use lights in your photos in Second Life. It's not super difficult. As long as you got land perms, you can do it. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.